When you're working with your clients and they're going through the same thing, or they're saying, hey Grayson, like I have these random times during the day in a social setting or whatever, I start getting anxious, or I see something that kind of triggers me, and I get overwhelmed, and I start having these thoughts, and I sort of just check out. How do you tell them to sort of just take a step back and process it? Like how would you advise someone that came up to you and asked you for the same help?
I think a really great first step when people are trying to overcome their anxiety is understand their triggers, as you said. And so, yeah, when are you getting triggered? What was the scenario? How did it feel in your body? And then the better you can get at that, and that's the first step in coaching a lot of the time, is that self-awareness period, just starting to understand, when am I getting triggered? So you kind of know before you even go into that scenario that you might get triggered, right? So that's kind of the first scenario. And then the other layer of that, the layer of understanding and self-awareness, is to understand, why are you getting triggered, typically based on your upbringing when you were a kid. Why is this scenario triggering you, right? Because a big part of being able to change is understanding why you are the way you are. And a lot of that comes from childhood. And this is where attachment theory gets into it.
Right.
Because so many times the reason people are triggered is because they're attachments, which form in childhood with your parents or grandparents or whoever raised you.
Right. And can come to the forefront in pretty much any situation, in any setting.
Almost any scenario. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, your attachment, this is another thing I say in coaching, is your attachments don't just affect your romantic relationships. They'll affect your friendships as well. They'll affect your friendships, they'll affect your career, they'll affect how you are in the office and how close you can be with people, all these types of things. I always say that I find a lot of like hyper successful people, oftentimes they have an avoidant attachment. And part of the reason is they're really good with first impressions. They're really good at the beginning. They're good at having like many, many, many friends, but they don't have a lot of depth of connections. And so they end up kind of compensating by putting a lot of their time towards their career and their outwardly view.
I have an experience, if you don't mind me sharing it.
Yeah, for sure.
I want you to give me your input and your thoughts or opinions on what may have been going on or what was happening. So, and I hate bringing this up because it's just beating at a dead horse. I was in a situationship a few months ago, and we went to this sporting event, and it was a really important basketball high school game that I was coaching, that I used to coach the kids playing. They were playing, and it was the finals, right? And it was a packed crowd. It was a gym full of people, all ages, right? And we walked in, and the person I'm with, she visibly started getting overwhelmed and anxious. I could visibly see it on her, right? And now my anxious attachment style started thinking, oh shit, what's going on? Did I do something wrong? Is this gonna end it? What's happening? Now I'm catering to her. Now I'm thinking, now I kept asking her, are you okay? What's going on? Because now I'm in my own head thinking I can evidently like so clearly see that something is up. Like as soon as we walked in, it was like oh shit.
Yeah.
So now I'm asking what's going on. And then she kept communicating, oh, I'm okay. I'm okay. But I know she's not okay. So it's reinforcing my anxiety and the thought of, okay, this is toast. And I did something wrong by bringing her here, or she saw someone that she doesn't like, or now I'm creating all these scenarios. And it was just this whole uncomfortable thing this whole time watching this game, because now I know this person's not good, and they're not communicating with me. So now that's also pissing me off that you can't communicate.
Right.
So there's a bunch of things going on, man.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, it's interesting. I think I've so many questions about this, like why it was even a situationship to begin with, all this type of stuff. Because there's two sides to it, right? It's you and it's also her. It's both, right? So it sounds like she has a little bit of an avoidant tendency there because she's not able to have these emotional conversations. A lot of the time, someone with an avoidant attachment won't be comfortable with these type of emotional conversations and will instead kind of shut off when they're upset and will keep a little bit of a distance. And part of the reason is because as a kid, their parents didn't really validate their emotional experience when they were a kid. So that's what happens. So that's what they're used to, right? Like a person who avoidant as a kid, when they were crying, their parent would just kind of either ignore it or be like, you know, toughen up. So that kid internalizes that anytime they're feeling an emotion, that they just need to deal with it themselves and they shouldn't be communicating. So the real thing is she aware of that? Is she aware of her avoidant kind of tendencies? And does she even want to change? Because you can for sure change, but the first step is she needs to be aware of it and actually want to change, right? And then the second part of it is for you personally, because a lot of the time what happens is someone with an anxious attachment will be with someone with an avoidant attachment. And the reason is they kind of reinforce each other. The anxious person had parents that were inconsistent. So sometimes they were loving, nurturing, all this type of stuff. And sometimes they were kind of dismissive or not really there. And so what that means is they grow up with this feeling that they need to win over the love of their parents. They often end up kind of people pleasers and this type of thing. And then the avoidant obviously is, yeah. So together, they actually are kind of this almost codependent, toxic dynamic because the avoidant person can continue to be avoidant and push the anxious person away. And the anxious person's so used to that from their parent that they'll continue to chase and go after the person. And the only way to really get around it and heal a lot of the time is for an anxious person to find someone who's a little more secure and better with communication and can help make them feel comfortable. And then the avoidant person to start facing those fears and having like uncomfortable conversations. Yeah.
What's I guess, why wouldn't someone that's an avoidant attachment not want to change? Right? Because you said it's like they can be aware of it, but then they got to decide whether they want to change or not.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because I think about this topic a lot because there's some benefits to these attachments, which is kind of a weird way of viewing them, right? So as I said before, I feel like the avoidant attachment, if you don't have these depths of relationships, a lot of the time you overcompensate with putting that towards your career, right? Because what avoidant people want is they want people chasing them so that they can keep just continuing to push away. And a good way to have people chase you is to have a really impressive career, have all this type of stuff, because then dates are going to come to you and opportunities are going to come to you. And then you can just keep people at a distance and never allow people in, right? And so the tough thing is that avoidant person needs to make the decision, do I actually want to change and allow love into my life and make these changes or continue just doing what I'm doing? And I think that that can be a decision for a number of years, but eventually, from what I've seen, is it kind of snaps and they're almost forced to change. And sometimes that can take almost their whole life with like a divorce or being miserable and not having friends when they're older or whatever it is. And then they're almost like forced to change.
They've achieved everything they've ever wanted, accolades, achievements, money.
That's exactly it. Yeah. So that's what's really common with avoidant people is they often have so many external achievements, right? So they have a good school, they have a good job, all this type of stuff. And because they're continually trying to fill that gap of emotional connection, which they really crave subconsciously, but they haven't yet really brought it to the conscious yet or put it in a place where it's valued. Because as a kid, emotional connection wasn't valued.
Is it more so men or women that?
It's a good split. I've had clients all over the map, man. It can happen at any age. I've had younger, obviously. I'd say most are like past 30. I think at that point, you've noticed enough of your negative patterns and it's frustrating enough that you're ready to make the change. But I even have clients that are in their 50s and 60s even. So it's never too late to make these changes.
With attachment styles, dude, one thing I've noticed for myself is that after I go through a certain traumatic experience, whether it's a situationship and you know that ends and there's a whole grieving process, I can sense myself going towards the avoidant attachment side where I'm like,
what does that feel like?
Fuck all of you.
Okay,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, what does it feel like?
I'll tell you what it feels like.
By the way, there's another attachment that isn't talked about as much, which is fearful avoidant. So there's anxious avoidant, secure, and then fearful avoidant, also sometimes called disorganized. And that's where there's a little bit of anxious and a little bit of avoidant. And that's where your upbringing was a little more chaotic you know, there was some nurturing, but maybe there was also some emotional intensity in the house and
Yes.
a little more chaotic, right? So
Absolutely.
you have elements of both attachments.
I think that
can be confusing.
I think that's perfectly what
Yeah.
I kind of go. And one thing about avoidant attachment, I would almost characterize it as it just feels powerful because you get into this place of almost like narcissism and I don't give a fuck about any of you. Fuck you.
Yep.
I'm protecting myself now.
Yep.
It feels good. It feels good for a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
but it's only sustainable for a little while because I'm grieving and I'm hurting, and it's better to feel anger than it is to feel sadness.
Sure. Yeah, sure. That's valid.
So people can sway back and forth.
Yeah, there's utility to attachments. That's the other thing. That's part of, you're never going to change unless you accept your current state. And they're not like inherently negative. Nothing's wrong with you or you're not broken and all this type of stuff. And you can really, really use anger to catalyze so much change in your life. And as you said, like being in that victim, like woe is me, sad, really like depressed, low vibration. Sometimes the best thing you can do is just take one step up the kind of emotional ladder. And that's oftentimes anger. You go from victim to, I'm kind of angry. And that can help you make changes in your life. Is it a good long-term strategy? Because do you want to be angry all the time while you like collect accolades and all this type of stuff? Probably not. But it can help you get up the ladder from just this really depressed state where, yeah, it's not good.
Yeah. Can you, based on just talking to someone for an hour or two, can you kind of figure out what their attachment is? You personally, can you tell from conversation with people?
I wouldn't say I can tell from conversation. I'd need to hear more about their relationships, and how they've gone throughout their life.
Right.
Like I think one giveaway a lot of the time for anxious attached people is they are serial monogamous and always with someone, and they feel like they need a partner. That's often a sign of someone who's anxiously attached because they're seeking that validation in a relationship. And on the flip side of that, with someone who's avoidant, a lot of the time they might have many partners, but nothing that's really that sustainable. They're often single and stuff like that. So
right. I mean, I know someone that is like that, where they are with multiple people and they haven't been in a relationship for a while, but once they do get into one, they become anxious. So it's like this whole attachment thing is just so back and forth, up and down, side to side, you know, and I don't really like with the fearful attachment. Can you talk more about that? Because
I mean, you can have both. That's the thing. You can have both because it's not so clear cut. It's not like you're just avoidant or just anxious. I mean, sometimes it's really clear cut. And the other thing I'll also say is sometimes someone can be completely single for a long time and have no attachment issues in their lives, whatever. As soon as they get in some romantic, and we all have a friend like that. We've probably had that ourselves. Mm-hmm. Some romantic thing, all of a sudden, all of your attachments and vulnerabilities, they flood up to the surface, right? And so that's where you really start getting how your childhood comes out more in your romantic relationships, just because those are the things that are the most vulnerable, right, with the most opportunity for heartbreak or whatever it is.
Right.
Yeah.
What's one of the most common trends you've seen in people in romantic relationships in terms of attachment and how they act and react in a relationship? What's one of the main things?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, it's funny once you start getting into this because it is pretty clear cut, and people all have really similar problems, right? The avoidant person typically fills their day with lots of activities, keeps their partner kind of a little bit off to the side, and that can work for a while. But the problem with that is intimacy is formed through overcoming minor and major disagreements and misalignments with your partner. That's how you can form intimacy over time. Because what it is it's kind of saying consciously and subconsciously to your partner, I trust you so much and like I love you so much that we're going to get through this difficult thing. And we're going to put a little effort in because we care, right? But what the avoidant person does is they just kind of ignore these little things. Oh, it's not a big deal to me. It's not a big deal, this little thing, right? And over time, over years and years, and especially in marriages and stuff, those little things become big deals. over time, resentment builds, right? And that's why eventually you have some huge argument and it's like, but you do this and this and this, and like all these things that you hadn't talked about over the years come out, which were potentials to build intimacy, but instead turn into resentments and all these things that you often can't come back from. And in my coaching practice, a lot of people come like post-divorce and they'll talk to me about these type of things. That's often what happens.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, most divorces are started by women, or they actually like initiate the divorces. And this is obviously a bit of a stereotype, but typically women are more proficient or more interested in these kind of emotional conversations than a lot of guys are. That's cultural, partly biological, and obviously it can flip as well. But I think that that's part of why these divorces happen, is that over time, the guy's like, oh, there's nothing wrong. There's no problem. There's no this, that, whatever. But it's all these little things that build up over time. And women understand that those are opportunities to build intimacy, but guys aren't understanding that, or they're starting to understand that. A lot of the time, what the guys think is, oh my God, my girl just always complains, my this, that. That's what the guy's thinking, right? But what he doesn't understand is that those are all potentials to build more intimacy and trust. And part of the reason their partner is complaining so much is because they want to feel that strength and that trust in the relationship. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting, man, because a lot of men in my life, and we're on the other end of it, where we're the ones longing for affection and emotional and communication. Like one of the things where I was seeing that person, I told her right off the bat, I said, I'm a corny guy. Like I love words of affirmation. And she said, I don't like giving compliments and I don't like getting compliments. It makes me feel uncomfortable. So right there, I'm like, okay, like I'm not going to force you to change, right? And you just said that you don't like, it makes you uncomfortable. Like there's a visceral feeling of uncomfortability.
Yep. So right there, and this one's like, for you, this almost like coaching tip.
Yeah.
Right there, you need to outline what your boundaries are in a relationship and what you're really looking for. Because that for you is kind of a red flag for someone who's a little bit of avoidant. Because a lot of the time, people who are avoidant, they really struggle with, one giveaway is they really struggle to say like, I love you or any sort of affections like that. That's a very big giveaway for avoidant because those things weren't voiced at all to them throughout their whole life. Sometimes they've never heard that at all or ever said it. So that's a giveaway if you want to know whether someone's kind of avoidant. And it was interesting what you said there because it sounded a little bit anxious, which is tied to the people-pleasing thing where you're like, you were kind of fine with it and like whatever. It sounded like you were a little bit accommodating. And then the next step for you, if you're serious about finding someone who you could be really affectionate with, and that's amazing, all this type of stuff, is you need to find someone who can receive those things. Yeah. And that needs to be like a non-negotiable for you.
Yeah.
Or at least is ready to try to start receiving those things.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. No, for sure, dude. 100%. I mean, like you said, like I was accommodating because in my head I was like, okay, maybe at some point she'll break. Maybe she'll let go and become affectionate, right? But I don't even want that. Like I don't want to tell her that I want this and then somewhere throughout down the road she gains the knowledge and takes down the barriers and starts becoming affectionate. Like that, it's also it just seems very fake and it's something that we had to like create.
Yeah.
And yeah, it definitely, when she said that, it was an alarm that went off, but I didn't end it right there and then.
Man, here's one thing I'll say right off the bat. I think it's something like, oh man, I've heard this about divorces. They say something like a lot of the time the issue that partners end up divorcing for, they knew about within the first like 3 dates or something like that. I think I said this last time, but we ignore so many little red flags and things, especially in the early stages in that honeymoon period. And what I'd say to people is, obviously you want to give things a chance, but don't ignore these things too much, these big incompatibilities, especially in terms of attachment and these types of things, because long term they become bigger problems. And you kind of knew it all along too. So yeah.
Do you have any examples of little subtle red flags that get overlooked that aren't like glaring, like oh, I was in jail for 10 years. Okay, that's a fucking you know what I mean? Are there little things like maybe someone talking about their dad? Oh, my dad was always away and I always wondered where he was. Uh-oh. Like, are there little anecdotes?
I'd say from my coaching, I think one red flag right off the bat is does your partner have a fixed or growth type of mindset? Like, how do they view the future? How do they view their ability to change and shift? And are they able to admit when they're wrong and be able to make changes? Because that's inevitable in a relationship. And if you're the type of person that has a growth mindset, but you're with someone who's like, no, I never do this or I never do that, you might be okay with that at the beginning, but long term that could be a big issue. And I hear that a lot of the time also in my coaching with these divorces where it's like one partner just never wanted to change and was so defensive about how they were. And the other person was just frustrated because all they really wanted is the partner to be able to change a little bit. And this is where it goes back to attachment, is a lot of the time it's that anxious person who was hoping the other partner would change and was really patient and kind of people pleasing. And so, yeah, that's one thing I'd say.
Is there ever a time where an anxious attachment person is in the wrong, where it's like, okay, hey, I know you're a little bit, passionate about this, but you just need to take a step back and kind of understand why you want this person to change this part of themselves so bad. Mm-hmm. Right? Is there ever, because it's never, the anxious person is never going to always be right. Yep. About the other person changing whatever it is. Like, is there ever a point where you're like, okay, well, you're in the wrong here?
I think where, I guess, anxious people get in the wrong, or at least should be aware of, is the trouble that anxiously attached people have a lot of the time is they don't have enough kind of self-confidence in themselves or their capacity to create boundaries or have their own life outside of the relationship. So they put too much power on the other person. And so I think that a lot of the time the anxious person might want the other person to change because that would feel good and make them feel more secure in the relationship. But what they actually need to do is become more secure just by themselves alone. Because that's what avoidant people are really good at. And that's why they can excel in career and all this type of stuff. Avoidant people are very good at being by themselves. And that's because as a kid, they were pretty much by themselves. Right? Like when they were crying, they were left alone. And so the belief they internalized was, okay, I'm in this alone. It's just me out there. And that can be a really, really effective thing to become really independent, make a lot of money yourself, all this type of stuff, right? But the anxious people have the kind of the opposite problem, where they're not self-sufficient enough and they're not focused on validating themselves enough, and they're putting all of their power outside to feel good.
Got it.
Yeah.
That's perfect way to explain it, because that makes total sense. Total sense, man.
Yeah, it's funny, man, once you get into this, because people all kind of struggle from very similar issues, and it seems complicated, but actually, it's a lot of it comes down to this stuff from childhood. Yeah.
Going back to what you said about divorces and how most of the reasons why people divorce could have been acknowledged the first few dates. What are some red flags that people should be aware of, even on the first date? I mean, first date, it's kind of a feeling out process, of course, but third, fourth, fifth date, a month or two of seeing each other, tendencies.
Yeah. So as I said, I think the most important things to pay attention to are on the first dates are, does the person have a growth or fixed mindset? How are they with money? That's another one that people can ignore when they're younger, but can be a cause for divorces a lot. You hear that a lot, is how they are with money. Are they a saver? Do they spend a lot? All this type of stuff. Because it's a practical issue that at the beginning you don't think about, right? But then over time that becomes like a big problem.
Right.
And then the other thing is sort of life vision and values as well. So, what type of life do they want to have? What do they share values that I share and stuff like that? Is there growth together long term outside of just our chemistry and sexual connection and all this type of stuff?
Right.
I think it's important to have growth outside of that, because the sexual chemistry, all that can ebb and flow, and you want other things that keep you guys together. And until you cannot have time to go back to that.
So, okay, I was going to actually ask this. How do they suss out how they handle money on the first date? What do you mean by that? Oh.
No. I mean, it's a good question. I don't know if I don't know if you'd be able to suss the money thing out on the first date. I think it's just something more to pay attention to in the early stages. You know, how are their savings? How are their, you know, how do they talk about money? What's their relationship with money, right? Are they really negative about money? Money's another really interesting topic. We can even go into this, to be honest. I've been getting really into, I've been reading The Secret recently, which I've known so much about, but never actually fully read. And it's a very interesting book. And just people's relationship and thoughts towards money and change as well. And what The Secret talks about, and one thing that's so common, is if your belief about money, and this is a belief that a lot of people adopt, if your belief about money is so hard to come by and I have to work so hard to get money, and the only people who have money are the people who manipulate other people, and all these types of things. If that's your belief around money, that's what will be your reality. Because essentially what these Law of Attraction, The Secret books say is that your external reality is just a projection of your internal thoughts. And so, yeah, that's what I'd say.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Do you, like, going back on the, I guess, just sussing out what this kind of person is and the vision they have.
Yeah.
Do you just sort of get a gauge on that based on things, little things like, oh, you're going out this weekend again. Oh, I'm going out this weekend again. Okay,
yep.
So well,
sure.
What's the plan? Are you working? Do you have any responsibilities? Like
yes.
those are like the empirical boom, boom, boom.
Yeah. Yeah. That's pretty much it. Little things like that. Like, oh, okay, this person doesn't really have a similar lifestyle or whatever. You know, they're not wanting to do similar things. You know, a while back, I have a partner now, by the way. That's also an update.
Cool.
Yeah, that's exciting.
Right on.
You can talk about that a little bit if you want. But before, there was this girl I was seeing, and I could tell it wasn't going to be compatible long term because she loved to just go out all the time, and like I didn't want that life, right? We had fun, whatever, but I didn't really want to drink that much anymore, and like I wanted to spend my Friday nights visualizing my ideal future and being sober and just like doing these kind of things because those things are exciting to me now, you know? Yeah. And this person wasn't on that wavelength at all. And so I think one thing that's the most powerful thing that people can do for relationships, life, or anything is to create your ideal life of what you want it to look like, right? Write that out in present tense as if you've already achieved it. So like I wake up and I am this and I have this and I'm grateful for that. And then combine that with raising your emotional state as much as you can. So that cocktail can essentially manifest your life for you. Of course, you need action. You need to take steps and everything. But as you probably know, and I know as well, when you're creating things, when you're in a better mood, you're going to create more. Mm-hmm. So raising that elevated mood and really knowing what you're going for, that's the way you can do it. So I've implemented like a gratitude practice every night and try to do it every morning as well, just to put myself in a better mood for the day and be optimistic, because you just end up getting more opportunities and creating better work.
Yeah, and that's how you raise your emotional state.
Yeah, I think gratitude is one of the easiest ways to raise your emotional state. So I think for people right now that are really depressed, as we talked about earlier, if you're really depressed and stuff like that, maybe try to transmute it to a bit of anger. I find that especially helps for a lot of guys, because guys are higher in aggression. So transmute it to a little bit of anger and direct it towards the gym or something like that, right? But the next best step after that is do gratitude, because gratitude's almost like a huge leap to quite a high vibration, high feeling emotion, almost quite close to joy and love. And it's a really easy one. It's really easy to be grateful for like a bed when you're going going to bed, or like some nice thing someone said or whatever, right? Or just the fact that you can walk around and all your limbs are like intact. Like gratitude's quite an easy one to, and it feels really good. So
Yeah.
yeah.
No, I get that. No, I get that, man, because actually a few days ago my power went out and I was miserable for 3 hours, dude. And once it went right back on, it was this whole euphoria. I was like, damn, okay, like this is something I could be grateful for, have gratitude towards. I have power, you know?
Yeah.
One thing, dude, I wanted to touch on, and it's something that I've talked to my therapist about, is social anxiety.
Yeah.
And the one thing, how he defined social anxiety was, we are so concerned about ourself when we are talking to someone else. Like as we're talking, we're thinking about ourselves, and when the other person is talking, we're still within our own body, within our own head, thinking about what is this person thinking of my face, or the way my mouth is moving, and the way my hair looks. It's a total selfish stance, and it's kind of ironic because it's counterintuitive, because you're so worried about what the other person's thinking of you, but it's really, you're so concerned about how you look or seem or whatever to that person or the people around you in that setting.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on social anxiety? What is it? How can people kind of figure it? Because it's really scary. I will say I've been in situations where I'm so in my own head that I can't even speak anymore because I'm stuck.
I mean, I'd say I think that's really common. I'd say the number one thing to overcoming social anxiety is, or one really helpful thing to know right off the bat, is people care way less than you think, and that can be very liberating. Like, people really don't care about how you're looking or even what you're doing and all this type of stuff. And it's not because they don't care. It's because they don't really have time to care, because they're too much in their own world, stressing about their own problems and stuff like that. So you really need to internalize that knowledge, right? That kind of thing, and have that type of thinking as you go out. Then the second thing I'd say is that the social anxiety, when you're hyper analyzing yourself, I think that even starts at home. That starts even before you're out at the social function. That starts when you're at the clothes store and you're having some thought like, ooh, which shirt would look really cool? Which thing would make me look really cool? Because what the subconscious thought tied to that is, I'm doing this thing to have others think I look cool.
I look cool, or yeah.
So you're essentially creating this thing where you need proof from others that they think you're cool, and you'll never really get it. You'll never really get it, because you won't get someone being like, wow, that shirt is so good. And even if you did, it still wouldn't be enough, because you'd be like, wow, but I thought everyone would think I like, it's too much. So what I would say is, it starts even outside of the social interaction. It starts with your clothing choice. It starts with where you spend time, the reason that you're going there. Is it authentic? Are you comfortable going, right?
Right.
Yeah.
That's true, man, because I've caught myself showering and I'm thinking, okay, once I step into that place, I'm going to say hi to this person, and then I'm going to walk over all looking like this. And then I'm like, okay, what the fuck? Like, I'm taking a shower right now. Like this, right?
Yeah.
And you kind of just lose yourself in what is going to happen, and you're anticipating the environment and the people. And
yeah. No, I think one of the most effective things, and I think Bill Clinton was really good at this, is really focus on the other person and have them feel like the most important person ever, right? Like, if you were in some zombie apocalypse and there was like a few people left on the earth, and then you came up to some random person, you would be like, oh my God, hello, whatever. That's how you want to be with people. People remember how you make them feel, right? Not what you say to them or how you look or anything. They'll forget all of it, right? You could change the next day, look completely different, say different things even, but people won't forget how you make them feel in every interaction. So one thing I'd say right off the bat is focus on how you make people feel right away in the first few seconds. right? Do you smile? Do you say, hey, what's up? Like, do you have that type of energy? And that becomes almost like your stamp. I have an example of a friend. This guy, James, I hardly ever actually even talk with him once I see him, whatever. But I love the dude. And the reason is every time I see him, he just has a huge smile and he's like, oh, wow. And he's like so excited to see me and it's so genuine. And then he'll always ask like a couple questions about what I'm doing. And then that's it. But it feels so good that I'm like, man, this guy's such a solid guy. So, yeah.
The key word there, you said genuine.
Yes.
Because a lot of people, it just doesn't seem genuine when they're happy, smiling. Oh, what's up, dude? I've had that moment, those interactions. I'm like, oh, I don't know, something about that. What is that? I mean, is that person forcing it? Are they inherently fake and phony? How does someone become genuine? Like, I'm also not really a fan of those people because it's just I know that they have ulterior motives and I can see right through it. I mean,
yeah. I mean, there's a place for that type of thing as well. I know what you mean, like people who almost feel like they're salesy when they're with you and just like, oh, and like say your name like 8 times and try to like win you over psychologically or something. And those type of people, I wouldn't even, at least they're trying to some extent. And I'm like, okay, that's just take it as it is. But I think genuine starts with just not trying to control the outcomes of how people are thinking about you, right? And that part of that is dialing it way back and just valuing yourself. And this is what goes back to like self-love and all this type of stuff. And knowing the value that you provide, even if you step into a room on like an off day or like a normal day or whatever.
Right.
And really understanding and even articulating, writing down, what is that value? Why am I just inherently valuable, right? And really focusing on those qualities. And then the second thing is like being genuinely interested in other people. And why wouldn't you be? I think if you're around people that you're not genuinely interested in, you might be in the wrong room, or you might be doing the wrong thing. Because
I was gonna say, because sometimes it's hard to be genuinely interested in everyone because a lot of people
that's not genuine. That's not genuine.
And it's okay not to be genuine and just be quiet, right? And be silent with those.
100%, bro. One thing I did when I was a lot younger that's common for more people-pleasing type people or people that want everyone to like them is, and I was a little bit more like that before, is I would try to be so interested in everyone. I'd try to be friends with every single person at the party, like the most social and all this type of stuff. Part of being truly genuine is almost being like selective with who you're actually interested in, right? Like, and not just forcing that and paying attention. Am I actually curious about this person? Because a lot of the time what happens when you try to be friends with everyone, you try to make everyone feel good, then you actually miss out on the real connection that you were supposed to have at that party or that gathering or whatever. That might have been like off in the corner or whatever. And so part of that is just being truthful with yourself. Instead of coming out and trying to be a certain way, like I'm going to be the most this, I'm going to paying attention to what are you actually feeling moment to moment? What am I actually being drawn to, right? And that's what intuition is, right? Intuition's a little bit closer to you and you have to be a little bit quiet to actually feel it. When you're trying to be a certain way, you're being logical. You're being a little more forward thinking and you're trying to plan it and control it. And that's what you're feeling when those guys are being like saying your name and da-da-da. They're trying to control a certain outcome. They're trying to have you like them, right? By using your name, by doing all these things. They're trying to control the situation instead of dialing it back and being like, what am I actually genuinely interested in this person? Like what actually draws me to them?
Man, so many things just popped up in my head because one thing I will say, I went on a big boys trip for golf a few months ago, and there's a lot of outspoken characters in that group, a lot of, just toxic masculinity, this and that. And not to point anyone out, but there was one guy that was just sort of more quiet, didn't say much throughout the whole trip. Yeah. And that was his vibe. I mean, that was sort of, he was just doing his own thing. I mean, he did pepper in conversation here and there. It wasn't just a mute the whole time. it doesn't go unnoticed when someone is, and that's a societal thing I think that people have in a group full of people, a gathering, a party or whatever. The quiet guy is deemed to be more awkward or antisocial, or this guy's shy, right? And more, man, I've told this to a few people. My biggest fear for Mo right now is me leaving an interaction or a gathering or a party and someone thinking, whoa, Mo is like really boring. Like he's really bland. He just didn't seem very, that's my biggest fucking fear. I would rather have someone say he's too much, he's intense, he's a weirdo, he's fucked.
Yeah.
I would wait. A date? Dude, if I'm on a date with a girl, I'm making it like I want her to at least be like, oh, I don't think it's gonna work out because I'm too much for her. I don't ever want to be that guy where they're like, oh, this guy's an NPC. I'm sure you've heard that term, non-playable character, where they're just like robotic and just kind of boring and basic. I could not, and sometimes, and I'm getting better at it, but before I was overcompensating by doing extra, by acting extra, just to make this person, whoever's there, think, okay, well, he's definitely not boring. He's a little fucking weird, but I'm okay with that.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's interesting. I think that would be shared by a lot of people, and to want to make an impression, not be boring, all this type of stuff. I think for you personally, I'd love you to just delve into that belief and why you feel that. I'd also have you think about how many times are you thinking about that fear, because another thing people need to realize is that the thoughts that you have end up manifesting in your life in the future. And so your life right now is just the accumulation of thoughts you had in the past. And so if you have thoughts about, oh my God, I'm so afraid I'm going to be boring at this social gathering, and you continually have those thoughts, and that's your predominant thinking, in the future, you're going to be boring at parties and you're going to be stressed about it because you're creating that reality for yourself. So I think that's one thing I'd say right off the bat is you can have that thought, but then try to minimize it and think about a different thought. Think about, oh man, I know I'm an interesting guy. I got a cool podcast. And replace it with more of those thoughts. So I think that's one thing I'd say. Obviously, it's hard to avoid your fears, but the more you think about your fears, the more they'll manifest. And people who play sports know that, right? Anytime you're like, oh my God, I don't want to mess up this shot, you mess up the shot. You mess it up, yeah. That's just how it is. And then the second thing I'd say is that's a really good tip for people at social gatherings if they want to be interesting. And the most important thing, and it's so easy because anyone can do it and you don't have to be interesting at all. And it comes from How to Win Friends and Influence People, but it's to be interested in other people as opposed to being interesting yourself. And so that's available to anyone, okay? Here's one thing that will happen. You could be the most interesting guy in the world and go to a party and be like, oh my God, I'm going here, here, here. People will be like, okay, yeah, that's cool. But the impression that they might actually leave with is, that person's a bit self-centered, maybe a bit narcissist, like, blah, blah, blah. That's actually what they'll leave with, right? But if you go to a party and instead you direct your attention on other people and become genuinely curious, right? And that's back to being, what am I interested in? And then just ask them so many questions because you are genuinely interested. And if you get someone talking 80% of the time and you're talking 20%, you're asking them a bunch of questions, they'll leave that party thinking, wow, Mo is the most interesting guy ever.
Wow.
And the reason is because you're asking a bunch of interesting questions to them. So they're like, wow, this guy's so curious. This guy's so this. Because you are interesting when you're asking people questions because you're curious about them.
You're so interested
in people who are interesting are curious.
That's a great tip.
And it's easy and it's open to anyone. You can have the most boring life ever, boring, quote unquote, because I don't think anyone's really boring. And everyone's got some weird internal world or something they do on their spare time that's kind of weird. But if you just focus on being interested in other people, that's almost the magic ticket. And that's related to, that can get over your social anxiety, all this type of stuff. So,
especially in a world where so many people would just love talking about themselves, it's a bit of a different, whoa, what the hell? This guy is really, into what I'm saying, I guess.
Exactly. And I think the other thing I'd say is you got to be genuine. So I wouldn't fake this, because some people then go fake it and ask like a million questions, just like, okay, this is kind of annoying. So don't fake it, but try to focus on other people and be interested. Be like, what can I learn from them? Anytime you're talking about yourself, you're not learning anything, right? So focus on other people.
Cool. Because I feel like people that listen, they're going to listen to this, they're going to be like, okay, I'm going to go do that. I'm going to have
for sure, bro.
10 questions ready.
Oh, I mean, don't force it, but just be mindful and focus on, be mindful, be demure.
Yeah, be demure. That whole new thing.
Yeah, be demure. No, but like, it's the easiest way, man, to be considered interesting yourself, right?
Because there's a really fine line between genuine and forcing it. You know, like
Yes.
there's like you almost like catch yourself like, ooh, like that question I just asked, that wasn't really I didn't really want to know about.
Yeah, and that's
whether
okay.
yeah.
That's okay. That's fine. That's fine. That's you. It's good to catch yourself, man. What's bad is if you're not catching yourself, right? If you're catching yourself, that's fine. You can just readjust later, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that there's a couple things. I think a lot of the reason why people don't like doing this is because, and people have this concern a lot, is they're like, man, but like my cousin, they'll just talk forever. They'll keep talking forever then. It's like, let them do that, you know? Let them do that. If you want to be around people who don't talk forever and actually ask about you and care about you, set that as your new standard, right? Imagine your life as including people like that, and you just will attract people like that over time.
Right.
Right?
One thing, man, I was actually I was ready to bring this up with you. It's like a flirting thing that I've noticed that it's a pretty clear indication that the other person's into you. I think so. Is when they adopt your slang.
Oh yeah.
I on a couple instances the past few months, I use a lot of different words, slang words, this and that over text in person, and I've noticed the ones that I mean, one of them came out and told me that they're interested in me. I noticed them like using my words and my slang, and I thought, I was like, oh, that's interesting. That's cool. I think that's a clear indication. If anyone's wondering if someone is interested, if they use your slang and you start talking the way you do.
100%. I think that can go even beyond that. And I think that that's a concept of mirroring. So I think if you want to know whether someone likes you on a first date, over time, all this type of stuff, pay attention to something called mirroring. That can happen in your body language, and that can also happen with talking, with tonality, with all these types of things. So someone might even start walking similarly to you, right? Like matching your stride when you're walking next to each other. That could be a sign that they like you. Or they might start smiling more. If you're someone who's really smiley, they'll essentially start copying aspects of you subconsciously. This won't be a conscious process unless they're being manipulative. But and that can also extend to text messaging as well. How many emojis do you use? How many this, that? They'll end up mirroring what you're doing. Right. So that's definitely a sign that someone could like you.
Yeah. Do you have any other flirting hints or tips?
For sure. I think a definite sign that someone likes you, and especially on a first date, is do they touch you? Is there any little touching? You know, like, and I would also say on a first date, if you're not doing any touching at all with the other person, like any light taps or any like on the shoulder or something like that, it's probably not going very well as a date. I mean, obviously there's cultural exceptions to that and there's different things,
right?
But having a little bit of that is really key, right? If someone gives you a little playful kind of tap on the arm or on the shoulder, or like on the back or like back of the hand, or the type of, notice those little things.
Don't overlook it. It's something.
Yeah. Don't think about it. Definitely don't overlook it, especially if they're laughing and like tap you a little bit. I mean, that's like a definite sign, right?
Yeah.
Don't be like overthinking it.
Because a lot of people think it's like, oh, they just grab your leg,
never
grab your face. Like, no, it's like little.
Never grab.
Yeah.
I would say like never grab.
Yeah.
Don't grab someone.
No, but what I'm saying is
but you know what I mean? No. Yeah. So people are looking for huge cues, bro.
Yeah.
It's like, pay attention to the subtleties. This is especially for the boys out there on the date.
Yeah.
Look out for the subtle touches on the date, right? Or the subtle looks and things like that. Those are going to be the signs that they like you. And Also, if you want to show that you like the person, because that's another important part of it, a lot of the time they're not actually that sure, you can also give them a little tap. If you both are laughing about something together, you can give them a little tap with the back of your hand on their arm or something, really quick, just playful. It doesn't have to be a big touch, because it's the feeling you create with them inside that builds that anticipation for more future touches, right? And it's like, ooh, like, why are they touching me?
Okay, because...
And don't overdo it. Don't overdo the touches. You don't need to. All you're trying to do when you give a little playful touch on a date, all you're trying to signal is like, hey, like, I kind of like you. You only need it to be enough that they notice it. Like, they could hardly even feel it. You could even like almost brush them a little bit, or just a little playful tap. All you need is for them to notice it, because then they'll start thinking, ooh, this person wants to touch me. Like, this is interesting. This is kind of fun. Yeah. That's all you're trying to do.
Will it plant a seed in the woman's mind that, okay, this guy is interested? Because sometimes they don't know.
Yes. They don't know.
They don't know.
Man, a lot of the time, like, especially, I don't know, you hear a lot of guys going on dates. It's like they're waiting for a signal from the girl. A lot of the time, the girl doesn't know if you like her, dude. Right? Like, and you're talking, especially if the person has like lower self-esteem or maybe an anxious attachment style, and anxiously attached people need more verbal confirmation, all this type of stuff. A lot of time, they just don't know either. Right? So don't be afraid to show that you like someone, right? And if you're with someone who you need to play games with and like pretend you don't like them and all this kind of game playing, just decide whether that's what you want to be involved with, right? And if you think, oh my God, dating in 2024 is all game playing, and you have that thought all the time, that's all you're going to find in your reality. You're just going to continue to find people who are playing games. Because the reality is there's tons of people who date and don't play games in 2024. Tons of people. So you just have to shift your own thinking.
That's something I need to shift for sure, man.
Yeah, it's out there, bro. It's out there. It's out there. So
it's tough, dude. I don't know. It's I guess I'm at, like, I don't know. I kind of enjoy being on my own. That's actually one thing I want to bring up. Before, I used to, you know, like last night, I just stayed at home and watched Lost for 3 hours.
Yeah.
And went to sleep. Didn't go out.
Nice.
Didn't do anything. Knew I had a podcast today.
Yeah.
Feeling refreshed.
Good man.
Before, about 3-4 years ago, I'd be thinking, damn, man, I'm so lonely. Like, it would physically, I'd mentally, emotionally, I'd feel, damn, I'm really lonely. I'm worthless. No one loves me. I'm such a loser. I'm missing out. And dude, I think there is such a big difference between loving being on your own, being alone, than being lonely. Because I've been in social settings when I've got 10 of my friends around me, and it's just chaos, and we're all talking this and that, and I've never felt more lonely. You know?
So what would you attribute for yourself? What would you attribute to that shift? The fact that you're able to now stay in. What would you attribute to that? Because I could have some guesses on that, but
I mean, I'd love for you to tell me what, but I mean, I guess for me, I'm 28 now. Maturity and just knowing that I'm loved, like just knowing that I have friends that care about me, even though we don't text every day, every fucking moment of the day. I'm not actually alone. It's just the fugazi fake thing made up in my head. And before, I know I'm connected. I know I can hit up my friend and talk to them. I don't know. I just kind of...
For sure. I think here's another thing I'll add, and I'm curious if this resonates for you, and something I'll say that can, I guess, a tip to become like more magnetic socially and have people drawn to you. This is especially true for guys, but it's also true for girls, is if you want to become magnetic, pursue the things you're genuinely passionate about in your spare time. So instead of focusing on validation from other people, work on something you're genuinely passionate about. For you, I think this is the podcast. You've continued to do this, right? And clearly that's given you some confidence. You've had some success. You're continuing to do this. You're excited for episodes, all this type of stuff. That energy becomes magnetic. People become attracted to the energy because you're actually so excited about it. They want to be around it, right? So part of the problem, the reason people have FOMO is they don't have something in their own life that they care about more than just pleasing other people. And so if you want to become magnetic, create a life where you care about it so much, it's a priority above like everything else. And that's almost like, that would almost be my number one dating tip, especially for guys, but also for girls, is create a life that becomes a magnetic draw for other people, because people want to be around passionate people, right? Especially passionate people that are having success, because a lot of the time success is just passion plus persistence, right?
Got it.
Passion for a long enough time equals success.
I hear you.
And I think that's true. I was literally thinking about that on the car ride here. I was like, that's what I'd say to people, man. Find something that you're so passionate about you could do the rest of your life, because you're almost guaranteed to have success. How much success? I don't know.
Right.
But you're almost guaranteed, because no one's going to be able to put in the hours that you're ready to put in to achieve it.
Yeah.
Then you become magnetic. You get all of these other things that you wanted. Girls, money, this, that. It'll just come to you.
And by having a passion, I made the decision last night, I'm not going to go out.
There you go.
Because I have a podcast to do tomorrow. I don't care if my buddies hit me up.
And you know what that also is? And this is what I would also have people do is label what you're doing in each scenario, right? Like label it. That's a good way to form like self-love. Articulate what you're really doing there. It's kind of self-preservation. It's making sure you're sharp for your work the next day. That's also showing respect for me. Do you see what I'm saying? Who's also has that certain standard? Because the reality is you attract people who share the same standards and values as you, right? So if you want to start attracting people who are making millions of dollars and this and that, you need to start having habits of those people.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. No, that makes a ton of sense, man.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just like I love that, because no part of me felt like I was missing out on it. It's Saturday night watching Lost. Cool. I mean, I enjoyed it, man. And I think I will say though, Grayson, these little like practices of just like writing these things down and a gratitude list, this and that, it's all great and all, but personally, like how I think of it is like, you just need to have life experience. You just need to live and go through these ups and downs and heartbreaks and moments of anxiety, fear of missing out, until at some point you just surrender almost.
Surrender is a great word. That's a great word to use. I think that's an interesting thing you're touching on a little bit there, and a philosophical and spiritual idea as well of surrender. This kind of idea that we almost have a fate that's predestined for us. And I'm not sure what you believe on that. I sort of believe that. But I do believe that we have a certain degree of free will, and whether we fully manifest that fate or not is kind of up to us. And so even the thing you said there about you'll have ups and downs, you'll learn from it, whatever, what that is actually showing is that you have a growth mindset, right? And so that's actually not actually shared by everyone. A lot of people have more of a fixed mindset, and they end up being a victim. And over time, they end up creating a life where they're just victimized. Like, this happened to me. This person died. This person. And so, yeah, 100%. But I think that these type of practices, things like, and I say practices deliberately because when it's a practice, it's something you consistently do, right? Even if you're not necessarily getting results on this day or that day or whatever. Things like a gratitude practice or reflection or whatever it is can be incredibly valuable long term, because these things compound. So find what works for you,
Why is it so hard for people to do things like a gratitude practice? Like, why is it like a chore for some people?
I think it's only a chore until you make it more of a habit, and that can just take several times of going back to it. So I think something I'd say to people is, if you're starting to try to meditate or this or that, obviously there's some things that are going to come more naturally to you and fit into your life really, really easily, right? There's other things that you might have to go back to 4, 5, 6 times, whatever, and you keep quitting. It's still worth going back to it, because eventually it becomes like ingrained in your DNA and you understand the value of it. So when you're really down, you're like, oh, okay, I need to start my gratitude practice again, because that was really helpful. You just start getting more and more tools to be able to get yourself out of hard situations.
Right.
Because the reality is you're always going to have hard situations and negative things, or perceived negative things. But these perceived negative things are just opportunities to learn lessons, and then to also feel like the opposite on the other side of it, which is joy and happiness and all these things.
Right.
Yeah.
With the gratitude list, because it's something I really want to get into, man. Even if the person is writing something as much as like, I got to wake up in the morning and have a cup of coffee. If they don't really, or I mean, that's a bad example. I guess like, I'm grateful I have a roof, I have a house. I'm living in a house. Like, what if they don't really believe in it? Like, what if that's just not enough for them? Like, it's just, okay.
Switch up your gratitude then. This is almost getting into a manifesting type thing. And this one interesting thing I learned about gratitude myself is I feel like I never truly understood true gratitude until I started creating a life that I actually loved. And then it started actually manifesting. That's when I really genuinely felt gratitude. I remember waking up in Mexico City one morning. I was like starting to build a TikTok following. I had a remote job, something that I had wanted and dreamt up for a while. And I remember just walking down the street, going to get some cheap food at a nice spot, cheap because I'm in Mexico, and just being so grateful. Sun was beaming. And I was like, wow, this is incredible. So I think that like, if people are struggling with the gratitude because they're maybe take things for granted, things like having a house, whatever, switch up what you're grateful for and go almost more the manifesting direction. Before bed, be grateful for things that you don't necessarily actually have yet materially. Like, be grateful for the money that you haven't actually received yet and feel the emotion as if you have received it. Because over time, that will shift your actions and you can actually manifest that. So yeah, that's one thing I'd say is I kind of have gratitude in a couple different ways. One, before I go to bed, I think about my day and things I was grateful for in that day and things that I could have also changed. And a lot of the Stoics did that as well. But then I also have gratitude where I'm grateful for things I haven't yet actually materially received. So for me, that might be a certain amount of money I'm making per month. It might be like group coaching or these types of things. And then you imagine it, and this is where visualization comes in. Imagine already having that. For you, I don't know what it would be. Maybe it's a certain podcast guest. Be grateful for them and imagine talking to the person and feel all those emotions as if they're right there. Visualize it in your head, and that will help you manifest it faster. And people can believe that or not, but it's been shown many, many times, and so many people that are famous musicians, actors, all this type of stuff, they use these techniques. So you can believe it or not, but whatever you actually think and believe, it will become your reality.
Right.
So
Right.
yeah.
I love that, man. And another thing, it's too like, oh, I have to go work out. Changing the word, I get to go work out.
Yeah.
I have the opportunity to go to a gym and you know, work out. Or I get to go to work today. A lot of people don't have work right now. They don't.
You know, it's crazy, man, because mindset it can be frustrating sometimes, and all these little mindset hacks can feel like a waste of time or something, but mindset's like 80 or 90% of life, bro. You know, and that's what people need to wrap their head around is, for any like entrepreneurs listening and stuff like that, they could probably relate that self-sabotage and things like that is one of the most difficult things. And I see that in coaching as well. And I've had on my journey as well, is so much of what actually slows you down is your own internal voice being like, oh, that's shit. That's not good enough. That's this, that, whatever. If you can get a hold of your mindset, man, you can create a pretty amazing life. So it's worth putting a lot of energy towards it.
Yeah.
Even if it feels like you're not making progress.
Right.
But, yeah.
And just also one last thing, man. I mean, just like being kind. Just being kind to yourself, whether, I mean, one thing my therapist told me, he said, I mean, I told him about how there was a really good looking woman at the gym and I didn't approach her. Yeah. And I'm just like, fuck, Mo, like you're such a loser, you're such a pussy. Like you didn't go do it. It's like, it's okay that you didn't go approach her. Like it's more than okay. Yeah. Right? Just like being kind to yourself. Oh, well, I didn't capitalize on that business opportunity. Oh shit. I'm not, all this manifestation things aren't working for me. Like, no, it's right. Just being kinder too, right? Like
100%. I mean, yeah, being kind to yourself throughout your process as you make changes is huge. And also remembering though how you feel for you with that approach thing, or anyone else that wants to approach someone that they're interested in. One piece of advice I'd say right off the bat is just think less. Stop thinking. Stop thinking. Like literally, this is even for creating any artwork or anything. The more you think, the more you'll just procrastinate the situation, and your fear will grow, and then you'll end up not doing it. So if you see someone's attractive, and then right away you're gonna start having thoughts, oh my God, and like self-judgment, get worried, stop thinking, start moving, start walking towards them, you know, and then just say hi.
Right.
Don't think about a fancy pickup line. Don't think about worry about that later. You have no idea how their vibe's gonna be. Maybe you start talking to them, they have a lovely smile, and right away you're comfortable and you're like, wow, this is amazing.
Right.
And trust me, bro, those little like cold approaches and all that type of stuff, it's so worth it, bro.
It's worth it, huh?
It's so worth it, bro. All that stuff is so fun just to remember on, and just do it, man.
Yeah,
so
just do
your
it.
gym crush and all that stuff,
Yeah.
man. Talk to your gym crush, especially if they've looked at you 1 or 2 times. Go talk to your
Just
gym
do
crush,
it.
bro.
Yeah.
Come on.
And
Life's too short, bro.
too short.
In a few years, you're not even gonna be at that gym anymore. You're not even that. Go have the experience.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't even allow
And stop thinking.
Yeah, stop thinking. Don't
Literally
even
stop
allow
thinking.
the thought of, oh wow, she's really good looking, I'm gonna go talk to her. No, don't even think
not
that.
even that.
Not even that.
Literally, because it's a feeling first, then it's a thought, right? And they both go back and forth. But a lot of the time, you look at someone and you're like, you're just drawn to them, and then you have a thought like, oh, she's good looking, and then you have another thought like, oh God, she's out of my league. Oh shit, I've never been able to get good looking girls. Oh, like, and then you go down this like thought thing, and you end up not doing it and just feeling bad actually because you didn't do it. So you need to stop your thinking and be like, and just go do it.
It's a great way to put it. I mean, shit, you've been killing it, dude. Can you give one little gem of advice, maybe flirty, relationship, anything? I don't want to put you on the spot, but I want one more little Easter egg of
Sure.
sign off.
Sure, I'll try to give you a really good one just because this has gone viral in previous videos and stuff. So I'll just say it. Maybe I said it on the podcast last time. But if you want someone to like you more, there's a concept called third person attribution. And this is where when you're talking to someone one-on-one and you say something good about a third person that's not there, and that person doesn't know them, the person you're talking to will attribute those good things to you. And part of the reason is that concept of it takes one to know one. And so if I say to you right now, oh, my buddy Ryan has such a good smile, great looking dude, like killing it in his business, you'll think, oh, wow, Grayson. Subconsciously, you'll think this. Grayson has all those qualities. And so if you're on a date and you want to win someone over, start talking about all your friends in the best way possible. Start saying, oh, my buddy Mo has his podcast. He's so cool, this, that. Because she doesn't know Mo. She'll just think, oh, Grayson's so cool because he has these cool friends. And he's also able to point out these things as well. And the only way you're able to point out something is if you have a little bit of it yourself. So that's a tip I'd say.
Woo!
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah.
Love it. I appreciate you, man.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming on. This has been great. We'll end up doing it again down the road for
Dude.
sure.
Yeah, for sure. Hopefully I met a Millie then.
Yeah, dude.
What a Millie, you're yeah.
I'll give it less. Another year, bro. You're there.
Yeah.
A milli.
Yeah, a year would be lit. But yeah, we'll go a year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Appreciate you, dude.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yes, sir.